Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. Ever reach into your pocket change, pull out a nickel, and just wonder? It's just a nickel, right? 5 cents. But what if I told you that some of those seemingly ordinary nickels hiding in your piggy bank or that jar on your dresser could be worth far more than their face value? Today, we're diving deep into one of the most common coins you're likely to find, the 1972 Jefferson nickel. It's a coin minted by the millions. But within those millions are a few key varieties and conditions that separate the common from the collectible. So, is your 1972 nickel just spare change, or is it a hidden treasure? Let's find out. First, let's set the stage. The year is 1972. The Beatles have broken up, The Godfather is in theaters, and the U.S. Mint is busy producing a massive amount of coinage. For the Jefferson nickel, this was no exception. The Philadelphia Mint, which doesn't have a mint mark, struck a whopping 202,036,000 nickels that year. The Denver Mint, with its familiar demint mark, produced even more, 351,694,000 coins. And out in San Francisco, they weren't making coins for circulation. They were only making proof coins for collector sets, which we'll talk about later. So, combined, we're looking at over 553 million nickels. That's a lot of 5-cent pieces. This immense number is the primary reason why the vast majority of 1972 nickels you'll find are, frankly, worth exactly 5 cents in circulated condition. That a coin like this, with heavy wear, no date, and details rubbed smooth, this is what we call call quality. It's worth face value. But condition is everything in numismatics. So let's break down what a typical circulated 1972 nickel looks like and what it might be worth. Circulated coins are graded on a scale from good all the way up to about uncirculated. Let's take a closer look. This coin has been through a lot. You can still see the basic outline of Jefferson's portrait, but the hair detail is very weak. On the reverse, Monticello steps are pretty much smooth. Value? Still just 5 cents. It's a filler coin for a typeset. Now, we're getting somewhere. In fine condition, you'll see more detail in Jefferson's hair and the coat on his shoulder. The motto, "In God We Trust," is fully visible. On the reverse, you might start to see the hint of 3 lines for the steps of Monticello. A coin in this condition might be worth a small premium to a very new collector. But realistically, we're still talking 5 to 10 cents. This is where it starts to get interesting. An EF coin has only slight wear on the highest points, like Jefferson's cheekbone and the hair above his ear. Most of the mint luster is gone, but all the details are sharp and clear. You can easily see all 5 steps on Monticello. A nice EF nickel might fetch 25 to 50 cents. This coin has barely seen a wallet. It has only the faintest traces of wear on the very highest points. It still has a lot of its original shine or mint luster in protected areas like the fields around the design. An 1,972 Australian dollars nickel is a really nice find in circulation and could be worth 50 cents to $1. An uncirculated coin, often graded MS 60 through MS 70, never entered public circulation. It was bagged, stored, and saved by collectors or dealers. These coins retain their full, original mint luster, that beautiful cartwheel effect when you spin it under the light. For a common date like the 1972 or 1972D, finding a truly uncirculated coin in a bankroll is a fun surprise. But what's it worth? Even in pristine mint state MS condition, the value is modest because so many were saved. A gem example graded MS 65 might be worth between $2 and $5. A perfect MS 67, which is exceptionally rare for a business strike, could push towards $20–$30. The key here is that for most circulated coins, the metal value, which is 75% copper and 25% nickel, is actually more than the face value. But for uncirculated examples, you're paying for the condition and preservation. Alright, so the circulation strikes are common. But what about those proof coins I mentioned from San Francisco? This is where things get a bit more specialized. In 1972. The San Francisco Mint produced 3 260,000 proof sets. These sets contained a nickel with a beautiful, mirror-like finish and sharp, frosted details. These S mint mark proof coins were not made for circulation. They were made directly for collectors that if you find a 1972 S nickel in a proof set that's been sitting in its original packaging, it's worth about $1 to $2 on its own, though it's usually more valuable as part of the complete set. However, and this is a big however, people did break these sets open. So you might find a proof 1972 S nickel in the wild. It'll look incredibly shiny, with a mirror-like background. If it's been handled and has scratches, we call it unimpaired proof, and its value drops to maybe 50 cents. But a pristine one is a really cool find in circulation. Now, for the moment you've been waiting for. Is there a major error or variety for the 1972 nickel that's worth big money? The answer is not really. The 1972 nickel is known for being a very consistent issue. There isn't a famous double die like on the 1955 Lincoln cent or a major overdate. That said, collectors are always looking for minor varieties. Things like repunched mint marks, RPMs, or die cracks exist for virtually every coin, and the 1972 D is no exception. There are listed RPMs where the D mint mark was punched twice, slightly out of alignment. These can bring a small premium, maybe $5 to $20 for a circulated example. But you need a magnifying glass to identify them, and they are scarce. The real treasure isn't a specific error. It's finding a coin in exceptional, gem uncirculated condition that someone saved for 50 years. So, let's recap your 1972 Jefferson nickel worn and circulated. Asterisk, it's likely worth 5 cents. Enjoy it as a piece of history. Crisp and clearly uncirculated. Asterisk, it could be worth $1 to $5, maybe a bit more if it's graded highly. Shiny proof with an S mint mark. Asterisk, that's a cool find worth $1 to $2. Does it have any weird doubling on the mint mark? Asterisk, get out a loop and check. You might have a minor variety worth a small premium. The fun of coin collecting is in the hunt. While you probably won't retire on a 1972 nickel, finding a beautiful, high-grade example is incredibly satisfying. It connects you to a moment in time and represents a piece of art that's been perfectly preserved. That I want to hear from you. Have you ever found a great-looking 1972 nickel? Do you have one stashed away? Let me know in the comments below. We're taking a deep dive into a coin that millions upon millions of you have, the 1989 Jefferson nickel. We're going to answer the burning question: what is the circulated value of your 1989 nickel? And could you have a rare error that makes it worth hundreds of dollars? Stick around, because the answer might shock you. First, let's talk basics. In 1989, Jefferson nickels were minted at 3 different U.S. mints. The Philadelphia Mint, marked with a tiny P next to Monticello on the reverse. The Denver Mint, marked with a D. And the San Francisco Mint, marked with an S. Now, look at those numbers. The Philadelphia and Denver mints produced over 1 billion coins each. That is an astronomical number. This immediately tells us that finding a 1989 P or 1989 D nickel in your change is incredibly common. The San Francisco Mint, however, only produced proof coins for collectors. We'll get to those in a minute. So, with over 2.5 billion business strike coins entering circulation, the 1989 nickel is, by definition, one of the most common coins you can find. This is the first crucial piece of information for understanding its value. On-screen title: Circulated value. What to realistically expect. The screen splits into 3 columns for P, D, and S mints. If you have a 1989 P or 1989 D nickel that is well circulated, meaning it has wear, scratches, its details are softened, and it has lost its luster, then its value is face value. I know, it's not the exciting treasure hunt answer everyone hopes for, but it's the truth. Because there are so many of them, a worn 1989 nickel is still just worth 5 cents. It's a common modern coin. Your bank will give you as many as you want for 5 cents each. Now, if you have a 1989 P or 1989 D that is in lightly circulated condition, maybe it was in a wallet for a few years, but not in a purse with keys, it might grade at a level like extremely fine XF. Even then, the value is only a slight premium to a collector who needs a nice example for a folder. We're talking about 10 to 25 cents. So for the vast majority of you, your circulated 1989 P and 1989 D nickels are spenders, not sellers. Now, here's where we get to the more interesting part. Remember that low mintage from San Francisco? Those 1989 S coins were not made for circulation. They were struck as proof coins. Proof coins are specially made for collectors using polished planchets and struck multiple times with specially polished dies. They have a stunning, mirror-like finish. These were sold by the U.S. Mint in sets and were never intended to be spent at SO. If you find a 1989-S** nickel, it shouldn't be circulated. But sometimes, people break open proof sets and spend the coins, or a coin gets mixed in. If you find a 1989 S nickel that has entered circulation and has scratches, wear, and milk spots, its value is significantly diminished. A impaired proof like this might only be worth 25 to 50 cents, simply because it's unusual to find and change. However, if you have a 1989 S proof nickel that is still in its original, pristine condition, the way it came from the mint, it's worth $1 to $2. But wait, we're not done yet. The real reason you hunt through every single 1989 nickel is for the errors and varieties. This is where a common coin can become worth $50, $100, or even more. First and most famously is the 1989 D repunched mint mark, or RPM. This is where the Denver mint punch was struck into the die more than once, and the impressions didn't line up perfectly. This creates a slight doubling or shadow effect on the D mint mark. Finding a 1989 D with a repunched mint mark is a major score for a variety hunter. Depending on the specific stage of the error and its grade, a circulated example can be worth $20 to over $100. You need a good magnifying glass or a jeweler's loupe to check every single D mint mark. Next, look for broad strikes or off-center strikes. These are coins that weren't struck correctly within the collar die. If you have a 1989 nickel that is misshapen or has a blank, flat edge where the design is missing, it could be worth a significant premium based on how dramatic the error is. An off-center strike of 5% or more could be worth $10 to $30 plus, even in circulated condition. So, your action plan is this: check the mint mark. Is it an S? If yes, set it aside gently. If it's a D, grab a loupe. Examine that mint mark for any signs of doubling or a shadow. Look for the RPM. Look for errors. Check the edges. Check if the design is centered. Look for any cuds, lumps of metal on the edge, or clipping errors. For the overwhelming majority of you, your 1989 nickel will be a cool piece of late 80s history worth 5 cents. But for a tiny fraction, you might have just found a coin worth a nice pizza dinner or more. So, the circulated value of a typical 1989 Jefferson nickel is 5 cents. But the value of the hunt? That's priceless. It turns an everyday activity into a treasure hunt. We're diving deep into one specific year, the 1996 Jefferson nickel. It's a coin that's still very common in circulation, but like all coins, its value depends on a few critical factors. We're going to break down exactly what to look for, the different mint marks, the errors, and finally, what a 1996 nickel is actually worth. So let's get started. First, a little context. The Jefferson nickel was first introduced in 1938, replacing the Buffalo nickel. The design by Felix Schlag featured a left-facing portrait of Thomas Jefferson on Now 1996 it's not that old. It was the era of Nirvana, dial-up internet, and the Atlanta Olympics. Because it's modern, the U.S. Mint produced a massive number of these coins for circulation. As you can see, both the Philadelphia and Denver mints were operating at full capacity. These are astronomically high numbers. For comparison, a key date like the 1950 D nickel had a mintage of just 2.6 million. So, right off the bat, the sheer quantity tells us that most 1996 nickels are, and will remain, face value coins. So, if there are over 2 billion of them out there, is any 1996 nickel valuable? The answer is, it depends almost entirely on condition. If your 1996 P or 1996 D nickel has been in circulation, meaning it has scratches, where on Jefferson's cheek and hair, and Monticello looks flat, then its value is 5 cents. It's worth exactly its face value. These are extremely common, and you'll find them in almost every roll of nickels you search through. That AN uncirculated coin is one that was never released into public hands. It has nowhere its luster is original, and it often has a brilliant, almost cartwheel-like shine. For standard 1996 P or 1996 D nickel in mint state grades like MS 60 to MS 63, the value isn't huge, but it's above face value. You're looking at about $0.25 to $1 per coin. Coins graded MS 65 and above are considered gem quality. For a 1996 nickel to be worth real money, it needs to be professionally graded by a service like PeaceGS or NGC and achieve a grade of MS 66 or higher. At a 1996 P or D in MS 66 might bring $5 to $15. But if you find one that is a super high-end MS 67, the value jumps significantly. A 1996 D graded MS 67 by PCGS, for example, can sell for $30 to $50. That's a pretty nice return on a 5-cent investment. Okay, now for the main event. The coin you absolutely need to be looking for. Everyone, meet the 1996 W Jefferson nickel. The W mint mark stands for West Point. In 1996, to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the Franklin half dollar and the centennial of the birth of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, the Mint released a special 2-coin set. This set contained a brilliant uncirculated 1996 Roosevelt dime and a brilliant uncirculated 1996 Jefferson nickel, both struck at the West Point Mint. The nickel from this set is the only Jefferson nickel ever minted at West Point, and it's the only regular issue nickel to ever bear a W mint mark. This makes it an instant classic and a semi-key date. Only 1.4 million of these sets were produced. Compared to the billions of P and D coins, that's incredibly low. You will almost never find this in circulation. It was only available in this special mint set. Because of its status and low mintage, even a raw, ungraded 1996 W nickel is worth money. An ungraded example typically sells $4.10 to $20 if professionally graded in high grades like MS66. It can fetch $25 to $40 in the highest grade of MS67. Values can reach $75 or more so. If you ever see a W mint mark on a nickel, you've hit the jackpot for the Jefferson series. Beyond the West Point coin, the other way a common 1996 nickel can become valuable is through errors. The modern minting process is highly automated, but mistakes still happen. Here's what to look for. 1. Die breaks and cuts. * Look for raised blobs of metal, especially on the rim or near Jefferson's portrait. These are caused by cracked dies and can be valuable. A significant cut error could add $10 to $50 or more to the value. 2. Off-center strikes. * If the coin is misaligned when it's struck, you'll see a blank area on one side with the design shifted. The value depends on how off-center it is. A 5% off-center might be worth $5, while a 50% off-center could be $50 plus 0.3. Double dies. * Look for doubling in the lettering, like "In God We Trust" or the date. The 1996 nickel does not have a famous, major double die, but minor ones exist. Any doubling should be carefully examined. A confirmed double die can be worth over $100. Always examine your coins under good light and with a magnifying glass. You never know what kind of mint mistake might have slipped through. So what should you do? If you find a 1996 P or D nickel in your change, don't get too excited. But do check for 2 things. 1. Is it in absolutely pristine, uncirculated condition? 2. Does it have any obvious errors or the elusive W mint mark? For most of us, the fun is in the hunt. I recommend putting together a 1996 Whitman folder page or just saving a couple of brilliant examples for a typeset. It's a piece of mid-90s history that if you think you have a high-grade or error coin, consider having it professionally graded, especially if it's a 1996 W. That will maximize its value and authenticity for collectors. To TO recap. Your average worn 1996 nickel is worth 5 cents. A brilliant uncirculated one has a small premium. But the star of the show is the rare 1996 W from the West Point Mint, which is always worth seeking.